The Utah offense, led by Devon Dampier, is starting to make major strides. We're going to discuss that and more of the biggest takeaways from the final media viewing spring ball practice ahead of the spring game on Saturday on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. It's your first time listening to the show. Make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200, $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. My name is JT Wistricill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by the head of Utah Rivals, Alex Markham. Alex, another spring practice session in the books. We're going to dive into that. Also talk about all the moves that basketball has been making, the transfers they're bringing in, the coaching additions, and close with some of the big visits that Utah has coming up to. But starting first with spring ball, my biggest takeaway from what's being reported in this practice is how good the offense looked today. Josh Furlong said they had some of the best drives he's ever seen. Devon Dampier making plays, WayShawn Parker a long run, the offensive line, guys like Otto Tia stepping up on the outside. I really like the way that the first team offense is coming together for Utah.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the longer you get into spring ball, the more impressive they should get, especially with installing a new offense that the defense doesn't fully know yet, right? They're still adding wrinkles, and so they should be ahead of the defense right now, and that's what's happening. But the bigger thing to it is you got WayShawn Parker stepping up, the big running back addition in the offseason. You got Devon Dampier, starting to blow up and just really dominate, and so that's a big deal, and then you add to the fact, you got Spencer Fano today sitting there saying, he wasn't feeding into the fuel on anything necessarily when talking about the best guys and so on and so forth. But he did freely admit that he feels like he's the best offensive lineman in the country, and he doesn't need to have like those rating services say that he is, because he's felt that and he believes that, and he feels strongly that he's going to prove it, and yeah, I mean, just when it comes down to when it comes to the offensive talent, man, I mean, there's a lot of playmakers developing. Zach Williams is going to be first and foremost, regardless out of all that stuff. And when he's a redshirt freshman, man, that's what's crazy, and he's probably going to make a pretty penny at the U over the next couple of years because he's that type that there's going to be other teams wanting to fight for, and so but yeah, Hunter Andrews, I mean, that guy's another guy that
what a story.
Fits any mold, and
offensively or defensively, right?
yeah, but thank goodness they're putting him on offense because he's too talented, man. What's nuts is everybody wants to talk about him being like the Brant Keithy type. I don't recall times where Brant Keithy was runner up the middle and looking to pop somebody. I remember him taking it, doing the end rounds and trying to hit the corner and just blaze past everybody. Hunter's as fast as him, probably faster to be honest, at 235 pounds. And so he's bigger than Brant was at that stage as well, and he wants to pop people, but he's really starting to catch on as a tight end as well. And, a lot of good things can come out of him. Otto T is another guy that's starting to emerge a little bit, and so Utah still needs to add at least one wide receiver.
Feels like it.
They can be.
I like the guys they have in that room, and you got Ryan Davis, who has the connection with Devon Dampier, but especially now that they're officially not getting a Dorian Singer back, they've known that for a few weeks now, obviously, but feels like it'd be nice to get another guy, right?
Right. 100%. 100. They need another guy. They need two other guys, pile up where you can. It's just that type of offense, and it's an offense that everybody's been saying all spring. It's so easy to learn, and it's just highlighting everybody's skill sets. They're still mixing in stuff from the previous teams that made it successful. Beck's smart when it comes to that, obviously. But it's should be a fun nightmare for opposing defenses next year.
Definitely feels that way. Really exciting what this Utah team is doing, and on both sides of the ball too. Definitely offense is the biggest takeaway, but you also have Steve Bartle put this out where he said that Kyle Whittingham talked about how Zacharias Williams and Rabbit Evans are two of the players that improved the most. I think Evans is going to have a monster year. I'm really excited about the safety duo, Teo Johnson, Rabbit Evans, and whatever role Nate Ritchie factors into this as well too, because I still think he can be a really productive player too. So a lot of guys and individuals stepping up for Utah that have been exciting. Alex, you covered a lot there, but I didn't get to ask you what has been your biggest takeaway from spring ball so far, or maybe even the most pleasant surprise.
You know what? I was gonna interject on you when you were talking about some of those defensive guys too. So I might as well talk about this guy as one of the biggest surprises. But Jackson Benny's been a huge surprise. You talked about 3 safeties right there. You're not even talking about Benny. Benny's that type that he's gonna need to have a scholarship by the time he's out, or he could have a nice little spring ball game and just what all the coaches are worried about, other teams seeing what other guys are doing and giving them an opportunity, and so Benny's made himself some money this spring. He's earned himself a role with Utah. What that's going to be, who knows? I mean, again, like the safeties are talented, but they're going to find a way to get him on the field. They love that guy, and just the fact that Rabbit Evans, it's not a surprise that Rabbit's doing what he's doing, because towards the tail end of last year, just the fact that he was getting those starts and emerging and getting all those reps, that said a lot, because I mean, he wasn't fully ready at that time, but Morgan saw enough in him that it was just too tantalizing to, not give him that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, just really like the biggest takeaways, it's, it goes back to the offense, right? Flat out, just seeing that.
I'm going to ask you this really quick, Alex. How concerned are you at all concerned? Like, the offensive line has been dominating the defensive line, it sounds like. How much of that is how good the offensive line is, and how much of that could be, hey, the Utah defensive line did lose a lot last year?
So and that was the other thing I was going to kick into after just mention the stuff with the offense. But yeah, offensively, so to answer your first portion of that, and then I'll kick into that, right? Offensively, it's refreshing to just see the fact that like the defense is even sitting back, getting excited about the offense, and just saying like, look, like these guys are catching on so fast, like, this wasn't fully expected. They're making life miserable for us. They keep adding wrinkles. We think we got them figured out, and they keep adding more wrinkles, right? And the fact that the guys are able to do that and learn that with such simplicity, as opposed to how it was with the Ludwig years, bless the guy's heart, great coach. He was too good of a coach for his own mind sometimes, if that makes sense, So that's been a huge thing right there, and just seeing how Dampier's really kind of gotten in that locker room, and some of the new guys too, and really just kind of like refreshed the vibe, even though it wasn't a bad vibe in the first place. It just needed like a new flavor to it, if that makes sense. And I'm not talking the quarterback position, I'm talking everything, because the last 2 years, it was just the vibe, the feel good vibe from the previous years. It was almost destroyed. Might as well say destroyed, right? Defensively though, yeah, I mean, you talk about the defensive line. When it comes down to that, Vimahi's been hurt a bunch of this spring. And so, there's your guy that is technically the anchor, but is he really the anchor? It's really, he's got the seniority, right? And, yeah, he's been hurt off and on these last few years, but other guys are still overtaking him, and so that is a position of concern. They've got to go out, they've got to get 1-2 defensive tackles, and they can't just be filler pieces, right? You've got to be able to go and identify a guy from maybe a G5, or just down a level, that's like dominating competition, has the body size. They need guys that can take reps and be reliable. And it's a very, very scary thing right now. Dallas Vakalahi should be a stud. He emerged and looked so good last year during all those injuries. And he's somebody that before the season even started, I was being told like, hey, just watch out for this kid when he gets his time. It's going to be good. Jonah Leea, Here's a kid that he still needs to put on weight. And at the rate he's put it on, I wouldn't be surprised if he puts on another 15, 20 pounds before the season starts. But he's finally at that weight. I want to say it's like mid 270s right now, where they're comfortable with just sticking him at defensive tackle instead of defensive end. And that was the long-term goal, right? The one that I'm really intrigued to see, and I actually made a tweet about this earlier in the week after it showed him getting an interception at the line of scrimmage, but Carson Kafusi, Doug Kafusi's boy. I'm telling you guys, that kid is going to be special, and it could end up being towards the end of the season. I don't necessarily anticipate it being towards the start, just because he missed the majority of his senior year because of a leg injury, just a freak leg injury, and he's completely healthy now. Obviously by evidence of what he's been doing in spring ball, but he's somebody that with more and more reps, he could really be emerging. I could honestly see him, because of what's in the room right now, I could see him being a starter at one point.
Wow.
Towards the tail end of the season.
It's high praise, but Dallas, like you said, Dallas was able to do it last year too. So
definitely. But it's scary right now, though. You're 100% right. It's scary right now. They need bodies.
It's just hard. Pepa, Tanuvasa, and Tafuna all in one offseason. This is a team that has a history of replacing defensive tackles, but that much production at one time, and you already mentioned Vimahi's injury history, that's concerning. So we'll see what Utah does. Kyle Whittingham did mention that defensive line, defensive tackle in particular, one of the positions Utah is going to kick the tires on in the portal. Portal opens up tomorrow, so interesting to see which guys enter, which guys Utah ends up talking to, could potentially bring in. Lot still to come from that. Just like there's still a lot to come on this Utah episode. Want to ask Alex about the Utah quarterback room, get the latest on some basketball additions. All that we're going to be covering in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are almost here. We got the play-in going right now, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live props, bets into same game parlay for your chance to win big. I am so excited to see how the NBA playoffs play out. Can the Lakers actually put this together? I'm a Timberwolves fan. Can my Wolves somehow topple the Lakers early? Are the Thunder legit? Are the Cavs actually a legit challenger to the Celtics? How about the New York Knicks? Can they get through it? Is Jalen Brunson going to have another crazy playoff run? All of that and more. We're going to get to see it on FanDuel. Don't miss out on the NBA playoff action at FanDuel. You can head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today at America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Alex, we're going to talk some basketball in a moment, but I just find it so interesting the way this Utah quarterback room is shaking out. Obviously, Devon Dampier is a starter. We knew that. I thought Nate Johnson was going to be the backup. They're using him in different ways, which could include some quarterback stuff probably. But then Isaac Wilson and then true freshman Bird Ficklin have been getting a lot of the snaps so far. We haven't heard about Zerbrug as much as we probably thought that we would. And I already mentioned, I thought Nate Johnson would be the number 2 quarterback, even though he's still involved in the offense. What have you made of Utah's quarterback room so far?
There's talent there. I really would feel more comfortable if there was a rock solid number 2. And I just don't see that right now. Isaac's had flashes, but then also Isaac has flashes back to the frazzled gameplay that he had the majority of last year. But again, the flashes are really nice. When it comes to the other backups, I mean, Dampier, I mean, we can talk about that at length, right? But that's not a concern whatsoever. I mean, he's going to do wonders for this offense. And, if Utah's up in the CFP picture, I mean, he's going to be in the Heisman conversation. That's how good of a player he is, But, when it comes to Zerbrug, he's just not catching on necessarily right off the bat, like, you would have hoped. We'll see how he does during summer. But at the same time, too, I really feel like somebody like Bird Ficklin just really fits the system. I would say, he's the perfect protege for Devon Dampier, but I would say that his game is more a mix between Tyler Huntley and Cam Rising. Okay. Like, and I'm not putting him like on that, on that arc, whatever you want to call it, right? I'm just saying, like from a stylistic play standpoint, that's what he's close to. He's got a long ways to go. He struggled a bit today, as did Isaac. Dampier was the only one that looked good and looked really good in the process. But yeah, I mean, Ficklin is somebody that I can see. If Isaac can't get over, just those like spurts of, and I shouldn't even say spurts. When Isaac gets frazzled, Isaac's game just falls off a cliff. If he doesn't get frazzled, he's the Isaac that everybody saw at the high school level. He's the Isaac that everybody saw in practices last year that everybody got excited for. But I can really see towards the end of the season, especially if Ficklin can keep gaining weight. I can ultimately see Ficklin as the long-term number 2. Isaac might be more of the number 2 that comes in the spells, kind of like when you look back at the Drew Lisk and Jason Shelley years with Tyler Huntley, right? That's a perfect example for you. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to still see develop. Those two are going to be a fun battle to watch during spring ball. It's not going to be settled during spring ball. Again,
are you talking about fall camp or just during the spring game on Saturday now?
No, yeah, it's they're not gonna have a full-fledged number 2 set. In after the spring game. There's not enough separation. You'd hope that Isaac could have done that, but that also tells you, the promise and potential of Bird Ficklin, right? But yeah, it's going to be interesting just to see those two get all, so many reps on Saturday, see how that develops, see if somebody gets the leg up. But again, it's, both of them are still going to be breathing down each other's necks. On top of that, you've obviously got Wyatt Becker. He was one of the incoming freshmen. He left almost as soon as he got here, so that's how the world goes in today's day and age, with being able to have the transfer portal and stuff like that. And Wyatt's a great kid with a great family, and he's going to do well somewhere. But I do feel like Ficklin was probably the better fit for Jason Beck's offense.
You nailed it right there. Jason Beck's offense. Wyatt Becker was an Andy Ludwig guy at the time when he signed on as a commitment. So that to me tells the whole reason of why Becker's gone. Wish Becker nothing but the best. Heard great things about him as a prospect. Was really hoping to see him as a Utah Ute, but now we're hearing great things about Ficklin. So incredibly encouraging. And there's always a lot of movement in the portal, and we'll continue to monitor the football portal. But the basketball portal is also going. Alex Jensen, this staff, they've been hard at work, Alex. What has been the biggest addition, whether it be coaching staff wise or on the court or transfer, that Utah men's basketball has added so far in your eyes?
Ooh, the biggest addition, either player or coach. That's a wide ranging question there, buddy. I mean, you saw all the news pop lately, right?
There's been a lot.
So yeah, I mean, let me just do a rundown on some of this stuff,
for it.
right? Because Rafael Chilius, he's a huge addition to this staff. He's gonna be, I almost look at him as like the DeMarlo Slocum type when Larry first came in, and they had to put that quick team together. And you look back, and the early years of Larry were the best years of Larry, and a lot of that was DeMarlo. They're going to be heavily relying on Coach Chills to be able to put this team together. And we've talked about it on, I think we talked about it on another podcast, just his credentials and the amount of guys that he's put in the league. He's got a lot of contacts. He's got a lot of guys that are going to be coming in with past ties with him, that they're going to see if they can, get them to, get out of the portal and be Utes, or, in Odie's case, he obviously got out of his West Virginia commitment, and because they're coaching change, and he's given a long, hard look at Utah. So that's a big one. Wilcox is an interesting one. What's that?
That's exactly where I wanted you to go. I had only mentioned coaches and not players. So that's why I also was hoping you'd go to West, but you read my mind. So continue, sir.
Wilcox is an interesting one. From there, Alex wants the GM to do a lot more than the typical GMs. and so he wants this system ran like an NBA front office. It's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. At the same time too, there's the initial part of all this stuff right now, because of Alex being with the Mavericks. It's kind of been interesting how everything worked until the others actually just got on board too, right? Where Chilius would evaluate the guys, send them over to Wilcox. Wilcox would give an evaluation on like, okay, this is where they fit in. This is what we could do for them money wise, and so on and so forth. And so both of them have been heavily involved, but from the sounds of it, Wilcox is the one that's been making a lot of the bigger decisions lately right now. I know that there were a couple of guys that wanted to come back that Wilcox said no to. I'm not gonna say who those guys are. Wallin was not one of them. They wanted Wallin. That was just unfortunate with how everything unfolded on that, and there were a bunch of layers to it. But yeah, Utah could have handled the NIL situation a lot better before Alex was even in place. Let's just put it that way. That hurt some of the early progress with some of the guys with with the NIL, more specifically Wallin and Dawes initially at first too, right? So yeah, Wilcox can be really interesting. Now you got Eric Daniels, that not enough people are going to be talking about. That is going to be low key the hire that people might look back on within the next 3 to 5 years and say, oh damn, that was a big one. I mean, obviously son of Donnie, Donnie was in Alex's ear constantly about it at the start. Didn't sway Alex, which props to Alex on that. That just shows he's an in-depth and critical thinker, very well thought out. And there were a lot of coaches within the state and that came to bat for Eric, saying like, hey, like, look, this kid, I say kid, I'm just used to him being Donnie's kid, right? Yeah. This young and up and coming coach loves Utah, wants to be a part of Utah, and it's not just his dad to even go by credential wise. Like, this is what he's done, at his previous stops. And I'm gonna probably flip him around, but between Weber State and Utah State, he was responsible for the offense at one place and the defense at another. And both of them did really well when he was the coach putting that stuff together. So he's got a lot of local ties. Got a lot of respect. He's a great talent developer, but at the same time too, his X's and O's. I mean, look, it's Alex's system, right? Alex is going to be putting that stuff together, but Alex has another great guy to be able to lean on from that perspective, and especially like in-game adjustments and everything, which Utah was awful at under Craig Smith, right? So all those things put together, I really, really like the Eric Daniels hire. And I really think that that's going to be a big one when we sit back and revisit it 3 to 5 years from now. Outside of that, quick rundown, obviously Martin Schiller, that's going to be a very intriguing one. He was a G League coach of the year, like Alex was when it was the D League, with the Utah Stars. So he's got all that familiarity with Alex. He's coached, I want to say he's been a head coach at 4 different places overseas. So he's very well versed. He's going to be crucial for the foreign pipeline. And I know I had talked on another episode saying Utah was going to be hiring a foreign guy. That's the guy that's the guy that they had on track all along. So that's going to be a very big one. Don't need to really dip into the director of ops, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, Utah, when it came down to it, James Okonkwo,
I think is.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I'm butchering the name.
Yep, the Akron transfer.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people weren't high on that, but what people got to realize is Alex has to put together almost a completely new roster, right? I mean, he's got Dawes back. It sounds like EB Traore is going to be back. They're going to give him the benefit of the doubt because of being injured. And they're going to honor Alvin Jackson's scholarship. The commit from Slick. There were plenty of people trying to wonder on that. And, I mean, he comes from an athletic family, he's got a good bloodline with all that stuff. And, Slick is a good connection. You want to honor that and, just hopefully see where it goes. Did he have a great year this year? No, I want to say he was like the 4th or 5th leading scorer with Slick, but you just never know. I mean, again, it goes back to you need guys to fit roles, and if he can fit a role at Utah, that's great. But with that Okonkwo guy, he's a high energy guy. He's physical. He's high energy. That's exactly what Utah needs. That's what. Oh gosh,
really quick. I'm just gonna say this. He started on a tournament team. I know it was Akron. Yeah, I know it comes from the MAC. He started on a tournament team. That's Utah's goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the stupidest thing. I'm drawing a blank on Keba. It's like
okay, yeah.
I was losing my mind for a second there. I mean, what did he do for Utah? He didn't do anything fabulous other than he was a bully in the paint. He brought physicality and he brought that athleticism and energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if this guy can fit that role, Alex is going to know how to utilize it a lot more than Craig Smith did. So especially with Alex being a big man coach. Terrence Brown, the Fairleigh Dickinson transfer,
average 20 a game.
I'm very intrigued, and I don't know where to take it on that, right? Because when it comes down to that, he averaged 20 a game. Okay, he shot 29% from 3, and he had, I want to say, 3.3 turnovers a game. Okay, so that tells you he's ball dominant. Mm-hmm. That's how he got up to his 20 points a game. So can he improve on that stuff with better coaching? We'll see. I mean, Utah's got a high volume guy that likes to have the ball in his hands, and if he can rein some of that in, then that's a good pickup. You just don't know though right there. But that's where it's interesting, right? Because like you look at these guys on paper, and Okonkwo, Brown, stats, Brown is the guy. Brown is the dog, right? But could Okonkwo have, a more impactful role on this team as it all develops, because the niche that he fits and what he can bring. So yeah, it's you don't know, and it's interesting just seeing how this roster is going to shape up and develop, and there's a method behind their madness, and even though Alex isn't in Utah right now, which is, I'll be honest, it's not a good thing that he's not here yet.
I like that he's finished his commitment, but we don't have enough time for the full debate. We keep going.
Props to him on that, and he's got two good guys in the background handling things, and they are doing things with like Zoom, the Zoom meetings, and Alex flying in here and there for specific things to make an impact on that stuff, and then him getting back out. But it would be a lot more beneficial for Alex to be there throughout the entire process, and especially, like, look, Wilcox has obviously been a great GM, but at the same time too, when it comes to the NIL negotiations with the guys, as good as he could be, you do need that other voice in the room, being Alex, that can kind of balance things out, right? And and so that's we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that develops. Hopefully, no offense to Dallas, hopefully they lose the play-in, and Alex is able to be right here, and again, it's going to be really interesting just to see how this continues to develop, because again, there's going to be players where fans are like, why the hell did they take him? There's a method behind it. Chilius knows what he's doing. He's developed enough guys. He's helped put teams together that have been successful, and Wilcox is going to be able to sit back and feel like he knows their worth. And for the most part, he's going to be right.
He is going to be. And really quick, Alex, just because we teased it earlier, Utah has some big visits coming up. Calvin Oda is one that you highlighted, I saw on social media. Just really quick, about a minute or so, what do you think of the upcoming visits Utah has?
Yeah, Calvin Oda, Calvin Odie.
Odie, thank you.
Yeah, it's open to interpretation on how he pronounces it, right? But former West Virginia commit, number 77 on Rivals, so he's a top 100 kid. Okay, shooting guard. If Utah gets him, that's going to go a long ways. He's a long athletic player. He's got one more trip that he's supposed to go on a few days after this one. But he's also got that. He's also played at one point for Coach Chills. So we'll see if he can, lock that down and prevent him from going on that other trip, right? Aside from that, let's see, you got Elijah Moore and Tyler Betsy. Okay. Two guys that, they didn't put up a ton of points. But again, I want to say it was like 4 and 5 points each, something like that. But again, being younger guys, fit in the system. Again, Utah's got to build a roster, and so we'll see what they can do, and really just go from there. They did have another kid that was a unofficial visitor in over the weekend. I got to keep him as a form of a mystery recruit. He did post on social media about it over on Instagram if anybody wants to be sleuths. But it's basically the way it's been termed to me is Coach Chills always has a guy that I wouldn't say slow plays, right? But has a guy that he can kind of survey and survey the room, weigh things out, and wait for the right time to pop that and bring them on board. So definitely has under the radar guys just from all his connections. Really kind of feels and sounds like this guy's one of them that they feel like they can get a lot out of within a year or two from now.
It's exciting. Utah basketball, a lot of great things going on. Just like always great when we have you on this show, Alex Markham. Make sure you guys head over and subscribe to Utah Rivals today. Give Alex a follow at Markham Rivals on X as well. Alex, thank you again for stopping by.
Appreciate you, buddy. Take care, man.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow as we gear up for the spring game on Saturday.